But, as I said before, this is part 2. I already preached part 1 2 weeks ago, and part 1's design was to get you from one place that far over there, and today it's going to be even a bit further. But lots of you have missed part 1. So I'm giving you the 2-minute version. And I don't know whether it's going to work, but when you listen and you feel like something comes up, you think, oh, that can't be true, or that's just... reserve your judgment till the end, because otherwise you're going to miss what's coming next. And I try to get the transcript up on the internet as well, so you can look at all the Bible references as well and just do a really good study on it. So the key point, and really that's a very simple one, it's not going to be controversial at all, is that if you're a Christian, the way God set it up is that you're not at home here in this world. There's a world to come, and this world will finish, and there's eternity to come. And our home is actually in heaven. And we live as people that fix their minds and their eyes on heaven and not this world. And because we do that, we can handle this world and the suffering and the challenges that are, because we know there's something else coming. Key Bible verses, maybe I'll just give you one, 2 Corinthians 4. We do not lose heart. That's the Apostle Paul talking. And he's saying it because he has all the reasons to lose heart. But he says, we do not lose heart. Our light affliction, which is but for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen, since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. So our home is in heaven. So, well, we know that from the Bible. How can we have an assurance of that? That was the question. Well, we can have an assurance of that because the witness of the Bible is that Jesus talked a lot about heaven, and Jesus made promises that that's where he would be going and he would take us with him. So there will be a resurrection and we'll join him there. So they're the promises, including our really... even when he died, there's a guy dying next to him and just reaching out to Jesus and saying, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus said, today you will be with me in paradise. So heaven is open right now. And Jesus knew where he was going. And it didn't take much for the guy to go with Jesus. All he had to say, Jesus, please take me with you. He didn't have to perform or achieve anything. He just had to be hungry for it. Then we know from the Bible that assurance that we know that God is real and that more is coming is through the Holy Spirit. The Bible says through the Holy Spirit and the experiences of peace and love and joy and the presence of God, we get a foretaste of heaven. Give you the scripture as well. God has given us the Spirit as a deposit and foretaste, guaranteeing what is to come. That's 2 Corinthians 5. Verse 4 and 5, and lots of others. Now I come to what I'm really having fun with. And what I'm preached on is, so you have Jesus' promises, you got the Holy Spirit doing already things, you can experience stuff. But then also, people in the Bible have been taken for visits to heaven while they were still alive on earth. For instance, Paul, that, very much lived with the glory that was to come. He said 14 years ago, I knew a guy, but he's talking about himself. He was taken up to heaven, whether in the body or out of the body, he didn't know. So he didn't know whether it was just his spirit, but, he was walking there and talking. But he was taken up to heaven and he heard inexpressible things. So that's the Apostle Paul. And when you look at the Bible and when you look carefully, the list of biblical key figures that have been taken to heaven is huge. You got in the Bible, so I got to be quick, Jacob, Moses, Isaiah, Daniel, Paul, we just mentioned, John. We have an entire book of the Bible. The last book comes out of one guy's experience of heaven. And it's in the Bible. And then you got, some other figures like Micaiah and Stephen. So that's in the Bible. Numerous guys have been taken to heaven. And then last time I also said in church history, it's been the accounts of Christians being taken to heaven and having a look around is massive. You had John Bunyan, Pilgrim's Progress, lived in the 1700s, just an amazing guy in church history. You got the William Booth, the founder of the Salvation Army. So that's more from longer history, but Kenneth Hagin, Heidi Baker, Jesse Duplantis. In the 1920s, a book came out called Visions Beyond the Veil, and that's where Chinese orphan kids had 2 seasons where all the kids for weeks had this almost constant visions and trances and been to heaven. Then 2004, the book came out, New York bestseller list, 90 Minutes in Heaven. Have you read that one by Don Piper? And then 2011, Heaven is for Real by Colton Burpo's 3-year-old's experience. So, and then Maria Woodworth-Etter, John Wesley, you name it. So that's all out there. History, and you read it about people just way away from you. But then in my own life, it's actually pretty close. It wasn't my grandpa, but it was my great aunt. So the sister of my grandma had a similar experience. I met people in Fiji that have been, they died and were up there and came back because the congregation prayed for them. Which basically, if I drop dead, just bless me. If I finally made it, yet like Tatiana and I, we got this deal going. So, hands off. You can just sing a worship song and be happy for me. So, amen. So, Fiji had an experience in Vietnam where children had, a whole bunch of children had visions of heaven when they were prayed for, and they were primary school age and younger. Christine Mennel, I told her story 2 weeks ago. It's just happened in Aurukun. So that's far north Queensland, where a guy was in Cairns Hospital, died. They sent him back to his community. 2 days later, he comes back to life with a story of having been to heaven and hell. And now the church is full. Like the people. So I told you it's going to be a little bit out there, a bit wild, but it is biblical. So that was the first part. That was my summary. So I took a bit longer last time to really get us all there, but today I just want to continue from there. I want to read to you, first of all, a few verses of John, who wrote the last book of the Bible, Revelation, and give you a little bit of description what heaven looks like according to the account that we find in the Bible. Okay, Revelations 4. At once I was in the Spirit, and there before me was a throne in heaven with someone sitting on it. And the one who sat there had the appearance of jasper and ruby. A rainbow that shone like an emerald encircled the throne. Surrounding the throne were 24 other thrones, and seated on them were 24 elders. They were dressed in white and had crowns of gold on their heads. From the throne came flashes of lightning, rumblings, and peals of thunder. In front of the throne, 7 lamps were blazing. These are the 7 spirits of God. Also in front of the throne, there was what looked like a sea of glass, clear as crystal. A bit more. He showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, shone with the glory of God, and its brilliance was like that of a very precious jewel, like a jasper, clear as crystal. It had a great high wall with 12 gates, and with 12 angels at the gates. On the gates were written the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. The wall of the city had 12 foundations, and on them were the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. The city was laid out like a square, as long as it was wide, about 2,200 kilometers in length, and as wide and high as it is long. So according to that description, that heavenly city Jerusalem, what's the shape of it? A cube. It's either a cube or a pyramid. So if it's wide and high and long, all the same, it's either a cube or... So that's massive, 2,200 kilometers from here to about Cairns, and as high. So, I think heaven will fit us all. Maybe just a little bit. The 12 gates were 12 pearls, each gate made of a single pearl. The great street of the city was of gold, as pure as transparent glass. Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, as clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God. On each side of the river stood the tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit, yielding its fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. No longer will there be any curse. You've heard the description before? So it sounds a little bit familiar. What strikes you immediately? What strikes you immediately? Is it vastly, hugely different from Earth? Yeah, well, everyone that's had some glimpses says words fail to actually describe the colors, the substance, everything, the whole look, and it's just amazing how it all works. So in one sense, it's very different. Amazingly different, and we probably can't fully imagine it. But on the other hand, it's not so different. Because some people have this idea, heaven is this, we'll just be this formless consciousness, like we just float around in space, we are this heavenly mist, and in there is our consciousness. Some people have ideas about heaven, but heaven, according to the description in the Bible, all of our 5 senses we have right now, seeing, hearing, tasting, touching things, hands, feet, we all got that still. It's actually very tangible. I mean, the Bible gives you a measurement how long the outside wall is. So it's not this nebulous, airy-fairy, pie in the sky, dreamland stuff. It's actually very concrete, and it exists. And we're still going to eat in heaven. Yay. Yay. So, in popular conception, sometimes that concrete aspect gets lost. But actually, we are still created in the image of God. Just this world has fallen. Sin came in. It just wrecked everything. But the basic design is going to just be purified and glorified, and it's actually heaven. Okay, so I gave you just a few verses from the Bible describing heaven. Now I give you a few experiences, testimonies. So, and like with all testimonies, believe it or not, how do you verify how it goes? But these ones, I do believe, the guys that tell it. So one is in Roberts Liarden, and he had an experience when he was an 8-year-old, and he was worshipping, and he was taken to heaven, and he got dropped at a space, he said, maybe as big as a living room, whatever. And there he got dropped right in front of the gate, one of those 12 gates, and he said it was enormous, the biggest he's ever seen, and he did say it was one pearl. And that's right out of the book. So, he saw that, and he said it was shimmering, and almost like the gate had a presence to it. There was life to it. It was so alive with the glory of God. And while he was looking at it, a voice said, "This is one of the gates." And the guy the person that actually said those words, he looked around, it was Jesus. And Jesus took him for a tour of heaven. So Don Piper, the pastor that passed away and that put the book out in 2004, he also saw the gates. He said, to him it didn't look like really like a pearl. He said to him it looked like someone had put pearl icing on a cake. So I don't know what it looked like, but I probably think not all 12 gates looked the same. But, he saw one of the gates as well, and he also said the gate glowed and shimmered. So that's the gates. Now I give you another one. So this guy, he's worshipping at his home. He's lying flat on the carpet, just praising Jesus. And the next moment he wakes up, lying on the sea of glass, clear as crystal. That's in the Bible as well. I just read it. So he's lying on the sea of glass. I mean, the mind boggles. So, and not only that, he's lying there, face down, and he feels really hot breath, like as fire on his neck. So he turns around and he looks into the face of a lion. And so, and the breath is just fiery hot. He looks into the face of the lion. His first thought is, maybe that's the Lion of Judah. Maybe that's Jesus. But it wasn't. It was one of the 4 living creatures. Do you know the Bible account of them? So he said, he said they had a face in the front and in the back. So, and he said the head was round, but it went like a Rubik cube. So every now and then it started spinning and spinning really, really fast. And when it stopped spinning, it was another face. They had 4 faces. They had lion, an ox, an eagle, and man. So, and he said, they had really short, stubby feet, the size maybe of a rhino. They had wings coming out from the side, and then another set of wings more underneath, covered with eyes, human hands coming out of the belly. And they are actually described in the Bible. Ezekiel saw them. And I give you the version in the Bible, Ezekiel chapter 1. Each one had 4 faces and each had 4 wings. Their legs were straight and the soles of their feet were like the soles of calves' feet. The hands of a man were under their wings on their 4 sides, and each one of the 4 had faces and wings. As for the likeness of their faces, each had the face of a man. Each of the 4 had the face of a lion on the right side. Each of the 4 had the face of an ox. And each of the 4 had the face of an eagle. So in the way he experienced it was head spins and another face comes. And then he realized he saw them moving. And, like if it's a bit of a rhino's, short, stumpy feet, you think they would be fairly slow. And, that creature actually walked towards him and, was breathing on him and was hot. But they were actually incredibly fast with their wings. And they were zipping around like lightning speed. And when they just zipped to another place, it looked like lightning. You actually saw the light of the lightning and thunder. So it looked like lightning and you heard the thunder, but it was those creatures moving from one place to the next. And when they were at the next place, they had another face. Is it a bit wild? Do you know he saw that in that experience, and then he started reading the Bible, if you believe him, and he found a description of it. And Ezekiel actually described exactly like how they moved and what it looked like and how it sounded. And I'll read it to you. So as for the likeness, that's Ezekiel chapter 1, as for the likeness of the living creatures, their appearance was like burning coals of fire, like the appearance of torches going back and forth among the living creatures. The fire was bright, and out of the fire went lightning. And the living creatures ran back and forth in appearance like a flash of lightning. When they went, I heard the noise of their wings, like the noise of many waters, like the voice of the Almighty. Tumult. Yes? Like the noise of an army, and when they stood still, they let down their wings. It's just like, Is that possible? I mean, is it possible that you worship in your living room, face down, and you wake up lying on the sea of glass and meet one of those creatures? Is it possible? It's a bit out there. But it's not any more out there than the Bible account, because John by himself on the island of Patmos. He's worshipping on the Lord's Day, and then he's in the Spirit, and he's right around the throne with more of those creatures, and the 24 elders worshipping Jesus around the throne, and he actually talks to one of the 24 elders. And then he's a bit sad and cries, and one of the 24 elders actually comforts him. It's a bit wild as well. I keep going, so I keep going. So Robert's Liardon, when he was 8, so Jesus showed him around, and then they went to the river of life, and so they're in the river of life, and that's an amazing experience. He says the water is not flowing around you, it's flowing through you, and all of that, and actually invigorates you and whatever. And then Jesus dunks him. Jesus dunks him, and he's 8. So when he gets up, comes out, he splashes Jesus. And then Jesus and him have a water fight in the river of life. I don't know, I can't make it plausible, I know. But that's a wild experience, and you can say, hey, Christianity is a more serious religion than having a water fight with Jesus in heaven. But like what Roberts said, as an 8-year-old, you don't know what that meant for me. Jesus at that time became a friend, a lifelong friend. Okay, so that's that. So 1920s, when the Chinese children, the orphans, when they had their experience, like the missionary, which is Roland Baker's grandfather, and Roland Baker was here at our renewal conference. So we actually know the family. We know the history of the families. So they're not really known as liars. But so the grandfather, they were surprised as well. They had not been taken to heaven, but the children, many times they actually went into a vision together, and they could observe the children. So the children were actually in heaven, but their bodies were still on earth, and they were moving and doing the things that they were in heaven. For instance, they were singing. They were playing the trumpet. They were playing the harp. Sometimes they 4 of them would stand together, and they would, the angels taught them to sing, and, they were joining the angels and worship in heaven. And they would talk among themselves who would play the harp and who would play the trumpet and who would sing and what song they would sing. So they hear them talking, and then they start singing, and the singing is a tune that they have never learned, and it's a language they've never learned and no one understood. That's cool. Man, do we want to join the praise and worship in heaven? So, the missionary, Roland Baker's grandfather, he spent weeks just being with the children and listening, because they were talking to the angels, they were talking to Jesus, and he couldn't hear what the angels or Jesus were saying, but he could hear and understand what the boy was saying. And he learned lots. Okay, so what did we have? We had the gate, we had one of the living creatures, we had the river of life, and we have music and praise and worship. So I like those stories, I really do. You've got to take them a little bit with discernment, because not everyone is a trustful witness. So I really want to know who is talking and whether I believe it. But I love these testimonies. Now, the question is, they're a bit wild and out there. Are they a fringe phenomenon? Are there flights of fancy that, this is not serious Christianity, stay away from that out there stuff? Do you understand what I'm saying? Just let's be a little bit more grounded and solid. How do you take those stories? Will they help you? Do you actually latch onto them and meditate on them and really take them into your spirit, so that you know that the pain of this world is just but for a moment and there's another glory to... Are those stories helping or not? Are they allowed to help? Are you allowed to read them and enjoy them? Okay, you're saying yes. So I show you a few things in the Bible that according to the Bible, not only do they occur frequently in the Bible, they actually have core significance in the Bible, way more than we may even be aware of right now. But I'm trying to show you, okay? Oh, this is fun. So, Jesse Duplantis, pastor as well, he's in heaven, and there's an angel, and gets shown around, and he's at the wall of the city, and he sees a foundation stone. And according to the Bible, the names of the 12 apostles are written on the foundation stones, and he wants to know whether they're actually there. So he looks at the first foundation stones and reads the name Peter. And then he goes to the next foundation stone, and he expects to read John. But he doesn't read John, he reads Paul. So Peter, Paul, and then he saw two more, James and John. But Paul, is Paul right? I mean, the 12 apostles of the Lamb, is Paul one of the 12, one, the original guys? Is he one of those? Bible knowledge, come on. No, he's not. He's not.
We think it's a trick question.
No, it's not. Yeah, no. Yes, I could ask those too. No, he's not one of the 12. Jesus picked Peter and John and all, and they went with, they lived life with him and saw him die and saw him resurrected and had appearances and talked to Jesus when he was risen and got set up and you're going to be my apostles. There were 12 picked, but then they were one short because Judas betrayed him. So he got out of the ministry. Yeah, it wasn't the best resignation. So the 11 that were left over, how did they fill the vacancy? Yeah, they had two guys. They thought, okay, they met the criteria, and the criteria are spelled out in Acts 1 as well. What did they have to have happened to them? They had to be with Jesus. They had to live with him, listen to him, see him, witness the crucifixion and the resurrection. So one of them, and then they cast the lot, and so let God decide which one of the two it should be, roll the dice or flip the coin. I don't know what they did. And then they said, oh, that's from God, now we're 12 again. But then Jesse Duplantis in heaven looks at the foundation stone, and that guy's name is not on there. It's Paul. Well, did Paul meet any of the criteria? No, he was. At the time when they picked they filled the vacancy, Paul was not even a believer. And then he was worse than not being a believer. He was the worst persecutor. When they killed the first Christian, he was there. And then he kept doing it. So, in the Bible, because of Paul's background, his apostleship was always contentious. There were always Christians in the church that said, Paul, you're not a proper apostle. You're not like the others. You are inferior. For instance, the book of Acts tells the story of the early church, mentions all the apostles, and the apostles are always the apostles. And more than half the book is about Paul. And he never once gets mentioned and described as being an apostle, because it was contentious. And then I give you Paul's own words. So I find them. He said, then Jesus appeared to James, then to all the apostles, and last of all, he appeared to me also as to one abnormally born. So he knows it's a bit fishy. So, for I am the least of the apostles and do not even deserve to be called an apostle, because I persecuted the church of God, but by the grace of God I am what I am. But by the grace of God I am what I am. So why was he abnormally born? Jesus appeared properly like to all the other apostles. They were eating with him, they were talking with him, they were walking with him. And how did Jesus appear to Paul? Which he said, he appeared to me also, but a little bit abnormally born. I mean, he was traveling on the road to Damascus to persecute more Christians. He saw the bright light. You know, he don't even know whether he saw the shape of Jesus, but the bright light, it blinded him. And out of that bright light, he heard the voice of Jesus talk to him. Does that measure up? If you look for the 12th apostle, for the foundation stone that's going to be in heaven, does that measure up to you? No, it wouldn't. I tell you straight away, church politics today, if someone rocks up with that kind of story, we say, good on you, but no. We go with the guy that knew Jesus from Galilee. I mean, I find this highly interesting that Jesus, and I think he's right with Paul, Jesus would do something that would be so unacceptable to everyone. So outside the box, no one saw that coming. It gets worse. It gets worse. So this is Paul talking about himself. So he's a really latecomer and it didn't quite happen like with the other guys. Then he says, I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that the gospel I preached is not of human origin. I did not receive it from any man, nor was I taught it. Rather, I received it by the revelation from Jesus Christ. Would you accept a guy like that? When God was pleased to reveal his Son in me so that I might preach him among the Gentiles, my immediate response was not to consult any human being. I did not go up to Jerusalem to see those who were apostles before I was. I mean, what does that mean? I did receive the gospel I preached not from any human man, or not any human. No one taught me the message that I preach. So where would it come from then? I mean, usually, the usual thing is you do hear it from someone else. I mean, all of us sitting here, we all learned the Christian faith from people that taught it to us. Our parents or living stones or, and then by the Holy Spirit working with the Word, conviction grows and an awareness. It's actually true what I'm hearing. But we're hearing it from another human person testifying to the message of Jesus Christ. You agree? It's not a trick question? You would agree? Yes. So how can Paul say, didn't happen for me like that? And why should that help him claiming he's an apostle? I mean, later he did come and presented to the apostles what he was preaching just to get a tick, years later. I mean, I think it is logical and conceivable that when he talked about himself later, 14 years ago, I was taken up to heaven, he learned the gospel there. It's either this true in heaven where he got instructed about the gospel and the truth of it. It either happened there or it was an extended prophetic encounter, here on earth. But it was supernatural by revelation, not through an intermediary. But I actually think it happened in heaven. So if it happened in heaven, is his experience of being taken up to heaven a fringe experience in his life? No, it made him the apostle that he was. It was right at the core and the heart of his whole life. It didn't happen all the time. He said 14 years ago, it probably only ever happened once in his life, but it set him up for the calling that he had. Is that wild? Jesse Duplantis, he's in heaven. He actually meets Paul and they talk about this. And I know another testimony, they talked about this and, it got confirmed according to their testimony. But the first question Paul asks is, Jesse, what are they saying about my gospel? Does that question strike you as a little bit odd? What are they saying about my gospel? How would you feel like? What do you think about my gospel of preaching Jesus? Come on, you would say it's not your gospel. It's our gospel. It's Jesus' gospel. You're just one of the guys telling it. It's not my gospel. But Paul actually, when you check the Bible, there are 3 references in his letters. He talks about my gospel. I think it's fun. So, I give you just one. Romans chapter 16, in accordance with my gospel, the message I proclaim about Jesus Christ in keeping with the revelation of the mystery hidden for long ages past, that all the Gentiles might come to the obedience that comes from faith. I know it gets a little bit heavy, but Paul, not only was he an apostle and a key apostle, and he was the core guy that brought the good news of Jesus Christ to the Gentiles, he also came with a special emphasis and message that he fought for like no one else in the church. And that was that all those that were not Jews, when they come to faith in Jesus Christ, they don't have to become Jews. Those that are not born Jews, they can believe in Jesus Christ, be incorporated in the people of God. They can go to heaven without being circumcised, without keeping food regulations, dividing food into clean and unclean, and all the things that made Jews. Paul said it's not necessary. All the laws, yes, they are in the Old Testament, but Gentiles can become Christians just trusting Jesus and by faith. And those laws are not necessary. That came by revelation. And I think that was brand new in the history of the people of God. And because Paul carried special revelation about it, he publicly rebuked Peter. The head guy of the other apostles said, "You're wrong insisting that the Gentiles have to become like Jews." And so not only was he taught the gospel in heaven, he was taught a bit of emphasis and revelation that made it my gospel. I think it's fun, but I also find it extremely challenging. I mean, yes, it's in the Bible, and hindsight is wonderful, but can you imagine anyone rocking up to us like that? Like, is probably a Christian just 5 minutes, doesn't talk to any other Christian, is just out there in the desert or whatever, says, "Oh, I've been taken to heaven and now I got my gospel, and guys, this is how it's going to be from now on. And by the way, I'm your head leader." Yes, we would laugh and say, "Go home." And yet, Paul is on the foundation stone in heaven, I believe that. So it's not a fringe phenomenon, it's extremely central. Do you know that all the encounters, all the guys that went to heaven, they received a mandate in heaven? It wasn't just an add-on, like, "Oh, you've served me so faithfully for all those years. Now I give you a nice afternoon of a joyride in heaven." It's not like that. So Moses, he had a vision, a very clear insight of what was in heaven. Do you know what that was? He saw things in great detail. Yes. So he saw the original worship place in heaven. And so he was shown that vision of heaven, how worship and the temple and how everything worked in heaven. And then the instruction for him was, what you see in heaven, you build here on earth a copy according to the pattern that you see in heaven. So he established the worship of the people of God according to the heavenly vision, and he built the worship tent, the tabernacle with the Holy of Holies and holy place, and the outer court. He built it according to what he saw in heaven. So is that a fringe experience for the people of God that Moses was shown a vision of heaven? No, it established the entire worship for all generations. So you may have felt a little bit uncomfortable that this morning we make a little bit of the stories of heaven. But the Bible is not as squeamish about it. You know, and like, if I could make a suggestion to God, like to do it better next time, I said, God, where you go wrong is just to take one guy. It would be better if you take a committee. I mean, how do you verify it from one guy? It would be better. Just take 5. And if they all 5 agree, then there's a better chance that it's actually true.
What if they all argue like every other committee?
Oh, we wouldn't argue. So, okay, that's Moses. You got Isaiah received his call as a prophet in that vision. So did Ezekiel. You know, Ezekiel, he saw the living creatures. You know, an angel said to him, "Son of man, eat what you find, eat the scroll and go and speak to the house of Israel." So in that vision, seeing all the things, he was eating something from heaven, which released his ministry. And I'll give you the last one. Book of Revelation. So this one guy worships by himself, persecuted, and he has this most amazing, extensive vision of heaven and Jesus showing him the future. And then Jesus said, "Bite it up. Write it down," so that all the church can actually read what's going to happen and receive encouragement from the prophecy and prophetic insight that I give. So again, it wasn't, "Oh, John, you're so poor and persecuted on that island. I just want to encourage you, just worshiping by yourself. You can't join the others and you just worship by yourself. Oh, come to heaven for a little while." It had a purpose. And we can read it today still. We read the book of Revelation and we are encouraged. And we find out about heaven. Okay, almost finished. It's long enough. Last time I said, you know, I'm telling it so the faith level in us is growing, that we can also, you know, a hunger is stirring in us that, Jesus, we want to go as well. So we want to be a church that is open to that. We don't want to put our foot down and say, "Oh, you know, Jesus, anything but that." No, Jesus, if that's available, us too. So we want to be open to that. But when you get there, if that's your hunger, if you want to, you know, go for a glimpse to heaven, even the modern examples that I know, usually it comes with a mandate and a commission from God. So if he takes you to heaven, you come back down with a job. So Jesse Duplantis was up there. And Jesus said, you know, give you this tour of heaven so that you would preach to the church that I'm coming soon, that I'm coming back. And Jesse Duplantis said, Jesus, they know that. The church knows you're coming back. And Jesus said, no, they don't. So then more things happened, you know, it goes for the tour. And at the end of the tour, again, Jesus said, you got that experience, so you tell the church that I'm coming back. I'm coming. And again, and Jesse Duplantis is disappointed. Like, if you get taken to heaven, you might as well come with something really awesome, new, amazing revelation that's no one heard before. Like, but that's not what he was given. It was actually the basic message that we've all heard and know. And so he was disappointed. And then Jesus said it again, and he raised his voice. They don't know that. I'm coming back. This morning, you know, there are plenty of Christians, we know all this stuff, but we're not really living with heaven as number one priority. For all practical purposes, we're like the world. It's all about now. It's all about getting stuff. It's all about this world and what we can get and what we can buy. This morning is a great opportunity to hear Jesus again and saying it's not about now. It's about the future. It's about heaven. It's about Jesus coming back and being certain that we are with him. Amen. Amen.